The woman rode alone across the red dust of Wyoming territory, her back straight as iron against the endless sky. Lena Fairchild had been riding for 3 days now, putting miles between herself and the church in Cheyenne where she'd stood in her mother's wedding dress, waiting for a man who never showed. Samuel Hartley had sent word through his brother, "Can't marry a woman who looks like a man in a dress." The message said, "Find yourself a proper wife." Lena had walked out of that church with her head high, sold her father's pocket watch for traveling money, and bought herself a sturdy mare named Duchess. She'd packed her leatherworking tools, the ones her father had taught her to use before the consumption took him, and pointed herself west towards Cedar Hollow. The sun beat down merciless as brass, but Lena didn't slow. She'd grown up breaking horses and mending tack alongside her father. Her hands were rough, her shoulders broad from years of honest work. If Samuel thought those were sins, then she'd wear them like badges of honor. The town of Cedar Hollow appeared like a mirage through the heat waves, a cluster of wooden buildings huddled against the vastness of the prairie. The main street was nothing but packed dirt, lined with a general store, a saloon called the Dusty Boot, a boarding house, and McCready's leather and tack shop. Lena tied Duchess to the hitching post outside McCready's and stepped inside. The smell of leather and Neat's foot oil wrapped around her like an old friend. A thin man with spectacles looked up from behind the counter. "Help you, miss?" "Looking for work," Lena said. "I can stitch leather fine as any man. Repair saddles, make bridles, anything you need." McCready's eyes traveled from her dust-covered riding skirt to her work-worn hands. "This ain't woman's work. Miss, try Mrs. Gertie's boarding house. She might need help with washing." "I don't wash clothes," Lena said quietly. "I work leather." "Not here, you don't." His voice carried the finality of a slammed door. Lena walked out without another word. She'd heard it before, would hear it again. But she'd be hanged before she'd beg. The boarding house sat at the end of the street, a 2-story building that had seen better days. Mrs. Gertie Muller answered the door, a German woman with steel-gray hair and arms like tree trunks. "Room and board," Lena said. "I can pay for a week up front." "Mrs." Gertie studied her with sharp blue eyes. "You're that woman who asked McCready for work." News traveled fast in small towns. Lena nodded. "Fool man," Mrs. Gertie muttered. "Come in. $1 a night. Includes supper and breakfast. No men in the rooms. No drinking. No trouble." "No trouble," Lena agreed. Her room was small but clean, with a narrow bed and a washstand. Through the window, she could see the prairie stretching endlessly, and beyond that, a ranch house nestled against a low hill. Smoke rose from its chimney like a prayer. At supper, the dining room filled with the usual boarders, 2 railroad workers, a traveling preacher, and a schoolteacher named Miss Catherine Webb, who kept stealing glances at Lena. "You're the leather worker," Miss Webb finally said. "I am. My father was a cobbler. I know good hands when I see them." She smiled kindly. "Don't mind McCready. He's set in his ways." "Most folks are," Lena replied. Talk turned to local matters. The railroad workers complained about wages. The preacher worried about souls. Then someone mentioned the McAllen Ranch. "Bo McAllen," one of the railroad men said, shaking his head. "Man's half ghost since what happened." "What happened?" Lena asked, more to be polite than curious. "A train robbery, 5 years back," Mrs. Gertie said, setting down a platter of beef and potatoes. "His whole family was on that train, wife. Little boy, his sister, all killed when the Garrison gang set fire to the passenger car. Bo was supposed to be with them, but his horse went lame. By the time he caught up..." She shook her head. "He don't come to town much anymore. Lives out there alone with his horses and his ghosts. Man never looks at anyone twice," the other railroad worker added. "Like he's looking through you to something else." Lena thought of a man carrying that much grief and found she had no words for it. She'd lost her father, yes, but that was nature's way. to lose everything to violence that was something else entirely. That night, she lay in the narrow bed listening to the prairie wind. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. She thought of Samuel's words, "Looks like a man in a dress," and felt the old anger rise. If being strong was unwomanly, if knowing her worth was unseemly, then so be it. She'd come west to make her own way, and neither McCready nor anyone else would stop her. She was nearly asleep when gunshots cracked across the night air. Once, twice, 3 times. From the direction of the McAllen ranch. Lena sat up, heart pounding. Through her window, she could see orange light flickering against the hill. Fire! Without thinking, she pulled on her boots and riding skirt. Misses. Gertie was already in the hallway, wrapper clutched around her nightgown. "Stay inside," the older woman ordered. "That's McAllen's business." But Lena was already heading for the door. She'd seen too many fires, knew how fast they could spread. If there were horses in danger, she ran for the stable where Duchess waited, saddled her with practiced speed, and rode hard toward the flames. The ranch house itself wasn't burning, it was the stable. Flames already licking at the roof. She could hear horses screaming, see a lone figure struggling with the barn door. A man fought to hold the door while someone else barely visible through the smoke tried to set fresh fires along the wall. The arsonist saw Lena coming and fired a shot that went wide. She didn't slow. The man at the door, it had to be McAllen, had managed to get it open. Horses poured out, eyes rolling white with terror. But there were more inside, and the roof was starting to buckle. Lena leapt from Duchess and grabbed a rope from the corral fence. "The back stalls!" she shouted over the roar of flames. McAllen glanced at her once, a flash of dark eyes and a smoke-blackened face, then nodded. They plunged into the burning stable together. The smoke was thick as wool, heat like a living thing. Lena found a mare trapped in her stall, door warped from the heat. She kicked it hard, once, twice, until it splintered. The mare bolted for freedom. "Get out!" McAllen's voice, rough with smoke. Not yet. She could see another horse, this one on the ground. Together they got a rope around its neck, hauled it to its feet, drove it toward the door. The roof beam above them groaned. They burst out just as the roof collapsed, sending sparks shooting into the night sky. Lena fell to her knees, coughing, eyes streaming. Strong hands pulled her further from the inferno. "You hurt?" McAllen asked. She shook her head, still coughing. When she could finally see clearly, she found herself looking at a man who seemed carved from the land itself, weathered, solid, marked by loss but not broken by it. His eyes were the color of good coffee, and they studied her with an intensity that should have been unsettling. "You know ropes," he said. It wasn't a question. "I know horses." Her voice came out rough. "And I know leather, if you need tack repaired after this." Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. "You're the woman McCready turned away." Lena Fairchild. Bo McAllen. He stood, offered her a hand up. His grip was firm, calloused. "That arsonist, did you see where he went?" She shook her head. "Rode off when he saw the horses were getting out?" Bo's jaw tightened. "Garrison gang. They've been hitting ranches, trying to drive folks out." He looked at the smoldering ruins of his stable, then back at her. "Why'd you come?" "Heard shots, saw fire, couldn't let horses burn." He studied her for another long moment. "Can you stitch leather as well as you handle horses?" "Better." "Then come by tomorrow. I'll have work for you." He turned to check on the scattered horses, then paused. "And Miss Fairchild, any woman who runs toward fire instead of away from it doesn't look like anything but herself. Anyone who says different is a fool." Lena stood there in the smoky darkness, covered in ash and sweat, and felt something ease in her chest. Tomorrow she'd have work. Tonight she'd helped save lives. For the first time since leaving Cheyenne, she thought she might have found a place to stand. Morning came with the smell of smoke still hanging in the air. Lena woke with soot under her fingernails and the taste of ash in her mouth. At breakfast, the boarding house buzzed with talk of the fire. "McAllen's lucky he didn't lose everything," the preacher said, buttering his biscuit. "Though I suppose a man who's already lost everything can't be touched by much more misfortune. He had help." "Mrs." Gertie said pointedly, setting a fresh pot of coffee on the table. "Miss Fairchild here rode out when everyone else stayed put." The railroad men looked at Lena with new interest. Miss Webb smiled behind her teacup. "Foolish thing to do," one of the men said. "Could have gotten yourself killed." "Could have," Lena agreed, spreading jam on her bread. "Didn't." She left them to their gossip and walked to McCready's shop. The leather worker was arranging bridles when she entered. "Come to ask again," he said without looking up. "No," Lena said. "Come to buy leather and thread. The McAllen ranch needs tack repaired." McCready's head snapped up. "Bo McAllen hired you." "He did." The man's face went through several expressions before settling on disgruntled acceptance. "I suppose he can hire whoever he pleases for his own ranch." "I suppose he can," Lena said mildly. "The leather and thread." He sold her what she needed, though he charged her city prices for it. Lena paid without complaint and loaded her supplies onto Duchess. Let him be petty. She had work to do. The ride to McAllen's ranch took her through grassland dotted with prairie flowers. In daylight, she could see the damage properly, the stable reduced to blackened timber, but the house untouched. The horses were scattered across the pasture, some still showing white around their eyes from last night's terror. Bo was working on a temporary shelter, driving posts into the ground. He'd washed the soot away, and in the morning sun she could see him more clearly, a man perhaps 5 years older than her own 28, built solid as oak, with dark hair that needed cutting and hands that knew work. "Miss Fairchild," he said, straightening. "Didn't know if you'd come." "Said I would." She dismounted, tying Duchess to the corral fence. "Where do you want me to set up?" He gestured to a shed near the house. "Tools are there. Damage tack's inside." The shed was organized with a craftsman's precision. On a workbench lay a pile of scorched leather saddles with burnt edges, bridles with heat-warped buckles, reins that had been cut in the horse's panic to escape. Lena rolled up her sleeves and got to work, the familiar rhythm of awl and thread. The smell of leather and oil settled her mind. This she understood. This she could control. She'd been working for perhaps an hour when a shadow fell across her bench. Bo stood in the doorway with a cup of coffee. "Thought you might need this," he said, setting it down beside her. "Thank you." She examined the saddle she was mending. "This is good work. Who did your leather craft before?" "Did it myself, mostly. Learned from my father." He picked up a ruined bridle, turning it in his hands. "Haven't had much heart for it lately." She understood that. Sometimes grief took the joy from things you once loved. "The stitching here," she said, pointing to an intact section. "That's quality work. Your father taught you well." "He was particular about things being done right." Bo set the bridle down. "You learned from your father, too." "I did. He said hands that could gentle a horse could master any craft." She pulled a stitch tight. "Course, that didn't stop folks from saying it wasn't proper work for a woman." "Folks say a lot of things." His voice carried an edge. "Doesn't make them true." They worked in companionable silence after that, him on his shelter, her on the leather. Around midday, he brought her bread and cold beef, and they ate sitting on the fence rail, watching the horses. "That mare," Lena said, pointing to a bay with a white blaze. "She's favoring her right front." Bo had noticed, too. "Burned her leg getting out, been doctoring it, but she's skittish now. Won't let me near." "Mind if I try?" He gestured permission. Lena approached the mare slowly, speaking low nonsense words. The horse pinned her ears but didn't bolt. Step by step, Lena closed the distance until she could run a hand along the mare's neck. The leg was wrapped but needed changing. You have a way with them, Bo observed when she'd finished rewrapping the burn. They're honest creatures. No pretense, no judgment, just fear or trust. She wiped her hands on her skirt. Simpler than people. That they are. He was quiet a moment. You planning to stay in Cedar Hollow? If there's work. There's work here, if you want it. Can't pay much. But I need someone who can handle the tack and help with the horses while I rebuild. Lena looked at him directly. Folks will talk. Single woman working for a single man. Let them. His expression hardened. I've heard all the talk I care to hear in this life. She thought about that, about the weight he carried, about her own stubborn pride. All right then, but I keep my room at Mrs. Gertie's. I'll come out days, go back evenings. Fair enough. As the afternoon wore on, news of her employment spread. She was still working when she heard horses approaching. 3 riders, Mayor Elias Lorne and 2 other men she didn't recognize. McAllen. The mayor called out. He was a heavy man with mutton chop whiskers and the bearing of someone who enjoyed his authority. Heard you had some trouble last night. Bo emerged from the house, rifle casual in his hands. Mayor. Also heard you've hired Miss Fairchild here. Lorne's eyes traveled over Lena dismissively. That true? My business, who I hire. Now, Bo, you know tongues are wagging. Unmarried woman, working out here alone with you. She's not alone. Bo interrupted. And she's working, not socializing. You have a point, Mayor, or did you ride out here just to gossip? Lorne's face reddened. I'm thinking of the town's reputation. We're trying to attract proper families, establish Cedar Hollow as a respectable place, having women acting like men, wearing trousers, doing men's work. I'm wearing a skirt, Lena said mildly, not looking up from her stitching. And I'm sitting down, very ladylike. One of the other men snorted, quickly turning it into a cough when Lorne glared at him. You may think this is amusing, Miss Fairchild, the mayor said. But I assure you, what I think, Lena said, setting down her work and standing, is that you're on Mr. McAllen's property without invitation, questioning his business decisions and my employment. That doesn't seem proper or respectable to me. She met Lorne's stare steadily. She'd faced down charging horses and burning buildings. A puffed-up town mayor didn't frighten her. You'd do well to remember who holds sway in this town, Lorne warned. And you'd do well to remember whose land you're on, Bo said quietly. The rifle shifted slightly in his hands. I believe you were leaving. The 3 men exchanged glances. Finally. Lorne tugged his horse around. This isn't over. McAllen, the town council will hear about this. They rode off in a cloud of dust. Bo watched them go, then looked at Lena. You just made an enemy. Won't be my first. She returned to her bench. Won't be my last either. He can make things difficult for you in town. Let him try? She picked up her awl. I've been unwelcome before. Still breathing. Bo studied her for a long moment, then almost smiled. You're a contrary woman, Lena Fairchild. So I've been told. As the sun began to sink, she packed up her tools. She'd repaired 3 bridles and started work on a saddle. Tomorrow there would be more. Same time tomorrow, Bo asked as she mounted Duchess. Same time. She rode back to town as shadows stretched long across the prairie, thinking about the day's work, about horses and leather and a man who understood the value of both. Behind her, smoke still rose from the ruined stable, but ahead, Cedar Hollow's lights beckoned like small promises in the growing dark. At the boarding house, Miss Webb caught her arm gently. The mayor's been making rounds, she warned, talking about moral standards and proper behavior. You be careful. I'm always careful, Lena said. But that night, lying in her narrow bed, she wondered if careful was enough. She'd come west to escape judgment, to find a place where her strength wasn't a shame. Instead, She'd found the same small mines in a different landscape. Yet she also thought of Beau McCallan's steady presence, the way he defended her right to work, the simple acceptance in his manner. Maybe that was enough. Maybe one person seeing you true is worth a dozen who couldn't see past their own expectations. Tomorrow she would rise and saddle Duchess and ride back to the ranch. There was leather to mend and horses to tend. Let the mayor talk. Let the town whisper. She had work to do. The crack of gunfire split the night like lightning. Lena bolted upright in bed, heart hammering. Through her window, orange light flickered against the sky. Not the McCallan ranch this time, but closer, near the edge of town. She dressed quickly, pulling on her boots as more shots rang out. In the hallway, Mrs. Gertie stood with a shotgun, her gray hair in paper curlers. "It's the Garrison gang," the older woman said grimly. "They're hitting the freight office." "Where's the sheriff?" "Out of town, the fool. Rode to Laramie yesterday." Lena grabbed her coat. "I'm going—" "Like blazes you are, Mrs." Gertie blocked her path. "This isn't horses in a burning barn. Girl, this is men with guns who'd as soon shoot you as look at you." But Lena was already pushing past. She'd been working at McCallan's ranch for 2 weeks now, riding out each morning and returning each evening. The town might whisper, Mayor Lorne might glower, but she'd found a rhythm, a purpose. She wouldn't hide while others fought. The street was chaos. Men crouched behind water barrels, firing at the freight office where the gang had holed up with a strongbox. Windows shattered. A horse screamed and fell. Lena pressed against the wall of the mercantile, scanning the scene. Then she saw him, Beau McCallan, behind an overturned wagon, rifles steady in his hands. He must have heard the shots from his ranch. She worked her way toward him, keeping low. A bullet whined past her ear, showering her with splinters from the boardwalk. "What in blazes are you doing here?" Beau grabbed her arm, pulling her behind the wagon. "Same as you," she gasped. "Heard trouble." "This isn't—" He broke off to fire at a muzzle flash. "This isn't your fight." "Town I live in, people I know." She peered around the wagon wheel. "That makes it my fight." Something shifted in his expression, but before he could respond, a new commotion erupted. 3 riders thundered down the street, reinforcements for the gang. The townsmen's scattered defense began to crumble. "They'll flank us." Beau muttered. He looked at Lena, seemed to make a decision. "You know how to shoot." "Well enough." He pressed a revolver into her hands. "Cover the alley. Don't let them circle behind." She'd hunted with her father, knew the weight of a gun, the kick of it, but shooting at men was different. Her hands trembled as she watched the alley mouth. A figure darted across, heading for the back of the buildings where the defenders couldn't see. Lena raised the revolver, aimed, squeezed. The man stumbled, clutched his shoulder, scrambled back to cover. "Good shot," Beau said quietly. The battle raged for what felt like hours, but was probably minutes. Then, as suddenly as it began, it ended. The remaining gang members burst from the freight office, leaped on horses, and fled into the darkness. They'd gotten some money, but not the full strongbox. In the aftermath, men emerged from cover, checking wounded, counting damage. Mayor Lorne appeared, vest buttoned crooked over his nightshirt. "Where were you when the shooting started?" someone called out. "Organizing the defense." Lorne blustered. "And I'll thank you to remember—" He stopped, noticing Lena. "What is she doing here?" "Same thing we all were," Beau said, "defending the town. Women have no business." She winged one of them. Tom Bradley, the blacksmith, interrupted. "Saw it myself. Stopped him from flanking us." Lorne's face purpled. "This is exactly what I meant about improper behavior. Women running wild, involving themselves in men's affairs." "A woman who stands with the town when you were hiding in your house?" Beau's voice was dangerously quiet. "That the improper behavior, you mean?" A murmur ran through the gathered men. Several looked away from Lorne, embarrassed. "I was not hiding," Lorne sputtered. "I was—" "Going house to house, rousing the men," Sheriff's Deputy Jake Morrison said, limping up with a bloody rag tied around his thigh. "Saw you myself. Mayor, through your parlor window, behind the sofa." The murmur turned to poorly concealed snickers. Lorne's face went from purple to white. "This isn't over," he hissed at Lena. "Unwomanly creatures like you corrupt the moral fiber of—" "That's enough, Mrs." Gertie's voice cut through like a cleaver. She stood at the edge of the crowd, shotgun still in hand. "Miss Fairchild pays her rent on time, causes no trouble, and tonight she stood while others cowered. Any man who has a problem with that can find somewhere else to buy his meals, because my dining room will be closed to cowards and gossips alike." Since Mrs. Gertie's was the only respectable eating establishment in town, this was no small threat. "You should have that shoulder looked at." Miss Webb appeared at Lena's elbow, medical bag in hand. "You're bleeding." Lena looked down, surprised. A bullet had grazed her upper arm, tearing through coat and dress. In the heat of the moment, she hadn't felt it. "Come," Bo said. "Doc Paulson's seeing to the wounded at his office." They walked together through the dispersing crowd. Lena noticed how people stepped aside for them, not just for Bo, but for her too. Some with respect, some with uncertainty, but none with the dismissal she'd grown accustomed to. At the doctor's office, she sat on a hard chair while Doc Paulson, a thin man with gentle hands, cleaned and bandaged her arm. "Just a graze," he pronounced. "You're lucky." "She's brave," Bo corrected. "Lucky would have been staying inside." After, they stood outside in the cool night air. The street was quiet now, broken glass glinting in the moonlight. "Thank you," Bo said simply, "for standing with us." "It's my town, too." She pulled her torn coat closer. "Temporary as that might be." "Why temporary?" She gestured at the night, the violence, the judgment. "Mayor Lorne won't rest until I'm gone. He's that sort needs someone to blame for everything that doesn't fit his narrow view." "Let him try." Bo said, "You've got friends here now. Mrs., Gertie, Doc Paulson, Tom Bradley, me." He paused. "If you want them." She looked at him, this quiet man who'd lost everything but still stood for others, who saw her true and didn't flinch. "I'm not an easy friend to have. Ask anyone." "Neither am I." His smile was barely there, but real. "Maybe that makes us even." They parted at the boarding house steps. Lena climbed to her room, arm throbbing, dress ruined, heart still racing from the fight. But something had shifted tonight. She'd stood for Cedar Hollow, and some of Cedar Hollow had stood for her. In the morning, she knew there would be whispers. Mayor Lorne would spread his poison. The respectable women would clutch their skirts when she passed. But there would also be nods from men who'd seen her courage, smiles from those who valued actions over expectations. She thought of Bo's words, "You've got friends here now," and felt something she hadn't expected to feel again, hope. The next morning came gray and drizzling. Her arm ached as she saddled Duchess, but she'd worked through worse. At the ranch, she found Bo already up, fixing damage to the corral where spooked horses had broken through during the night's gunfire. "How's the arm?" he asked. "Sore but serviceable." "Good." He handed her a cup of coffee. "Because we've got trouble." He nodded toward the rise where 3 riders approached. Not the mayor this time, these were strangers, hard-faced men who wore their guns like old friends. "Garrison gang?" Lena asked quietly. "Could be. Stay close to the house." But she moved to stand beside him instead, hand near the revolver he'd given her the night before and told her to keep. The riders stopped just outside comfortable shooting distance. The leader, a man with pale eyes and a scar across his jaw, smiled without warmth. "Heard you folks had some excitement last night," he called out. "Heard the same." Bo replied evenly. Also heard a woman did some shooting. That true? Bo said nothing. The scared man's smile widened. See, we got a man nursing a wounded shoulder. Says a woman shot him while he was running from trouble. That doesn't sit right with us. Man's got a right to run without being shot in the back. Man's got a right to stay out of other people's business too, Lena said. Seems your friend forgot that part. The rider's eyes fixed on her. You'd be the leather worker, the one who thinks she's a man. I think I'm someone who can put a bullet where it needs to go. Your friend learned that. You want a lesson too. The tension stretched tight as wet leather. Then the scarred man laughed an ugly sound. Garrison's going to love this. A woman who shoots back. He collects oddities. Might just add you to his collection. Tell Garrison he's welcome to try, Bo said quietly. But he'd better bring more men than last time, and better men than you. Something dangerous flickered in the rider's eyes. But he wheeled his horse around. This isn't over. McAllen, not by half. They watched the riders disappear over the rise. Only then did Lena realize her hand was shaking. They'll be back, she said. Yes. Bo's face was grim. With more men and worse intentions, I've brought trouble to you. No. She turned to face him fully. I brought myself to trouble. Nobody forced me to pick up that gun last night. Most women would have stayed inside. I'm not most women. Thought you'd noticed that by now. He looked at her for a long moment. I've noticed more than that. Lena Fairchild. Before she could ask what he meant, he was already walking toward the house. Come on. If they're coming back, we'd best be ready. Can you shoot a rifle as well as a pistol? Better. Then I'll teach you to shoot like your life depends on it. He paused at the door. Because it just might. The rain had been falling for 2 days straight, turning the road to McAllen's ranch into a river of mud. Lena arrived soaked through, her coat heavy with water, boots squelching with each step. You're late, Bo said from the doorway, though his tone held concern rather than criticism. Duchess threw a shoe. Had to walk her the last mile. She led the limping mare to the covered area beside the house. This weather's not letting up. No, and that's what worries me. He helped her unsaddle Duchess, his movements efficient despite the rain streaming off his hat. Garrison's men like weather like this. Covers sound, makes tracking harder. For the past week, they'd been preparing. Bo had taught her to shoot his Winchester, how to reload quickly, where to position herself for best cover. The work on leather goods continued, but now with one eye always on the horizon. Your arm's bleeding again, he noticed as she struggled with the heavy saddle. It's nothing, but she let him take the saddle, followed him into the house. The cabin was simple but clean, one main room with a kitchen area, a bedroom beyond, and a loft. A fire crackled in the stone hearth, and Lena moved toward it gratefully. Sit, Bo ordered, already reaching for the medical supplies he'd taken to keeping handy. That wound needs proper tending. I can manage. Sit. Something in his voice made her obey. She shrugged out of her wet coat, wincing as the movement pulled at the injury. The bandage had soaked through, showing red. Bo worked in silence, cutting away the old dressing with careful hands. The wound had reopened, probably from hefting saddles all week despite the pain. You should have said something, he murmured, cleaning the area with whiskey. I didn't want to be trouble. His hands stilled. Lena, you're not trouble. You're... He stopped, returned to his work. You need to take better care of yourself. I've never been much good at that. I noticed. His touch was gentle as he rewrapped the wound. There. Try to keep it dry this time. In this weather, she managed to smile. Might as well ask the sky to stop crying. He sat back, and for a moment they just looked at each other. The fire popped, sending sparks up the chimney. Rain drummed on the roof. Lena became aware of how close they were sitting, how his eyes held flecks of gold in the firelight. You should stay, he said suddenly. Tonight, I mean, This storm's getting worse, and Duchess can't make it back on that shoe." She knew she should refuse, knew what the town would say if she spent a night here, but she was tired of caring what the town said. "All right," she agreed. "If you've got space. You can have the bed. I'll take the loft." "I'm not putting you out of your own bed. Bo McCallan." "You are." His jaw set in that stubborn line she'd come to recognize. "No arguments." She was too tired to fight him on it. While he went to tend the horses, she dried her clothes by the fire, helped herself to the stew simmering on the stove. Simple fare, but hot and filling. When he returned, they ate together at the rough table, rain still hammering outside. It felt strangely domestic, comfortable in a way that should have worried her. "Tell me about him," Bo said unexpectedly. "The man who left you at the altar." Lena's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. "How did you—" "Mrs. Gertie mentioned it. Said you came to town with a wedding dress in your saddlebags." She set down her spoon. "Samuel Hartley. We were engaged 2 years. He courted me proper, said all the right things. Then the morning of the wedding, he saw me helping my cousin with a broken wagon wheel. Sent his brother to tell me a woman who could fix wagons wasn't the wife he wanted. Fool." "That's what I thought, among other, less polite things." She studied her hands, rough, calloused, capable. "He wanted someone delicate, decorative, someone who'd need him for everything." "Some men do." Bo pushed his empty bowl away. "Never understood it myself. My Mary, she could birth a calf, bake bread, and balance the account books all before noon. Made her more beautiful to me, not less." It was the first time he'd mentioned his wife by name. Lena waited, not pushing. "She would have liked you," he continued quietly. "She appreciated women who stood on their own feet." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Told me once that if I died, she'd run the ranch better without me. Probably would have too." "I'm sorry," Lena said, "for your loss." 4 years, 7 months, 12 days. He stared at the fire. "Some mornings I still reach for her side of the bed. Still hear Tommy asking for one more story before sleep." His voice roughed. "Garrison took that from me. Took everything." Without thinking, Lena reached across the table, covered his hand with hers. He turned his palm up, laced their fingers together. "Is that why you stay?" she asked. "Waiting for him to come back?" "Maybe. Or maybe I stay because leaving feels like letting them go." He squeezed her hand gently. "But lately, I've had other reasons to stay." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Lena felt her heart skip, but before she could respond, Duchess whinnied outside sharp, alarmed. Both of them moved at once. Bo grabbed his rifle. Lena took the revolver. They doused the lamps, peered through the windows into the storm-lashed darkness. Lightning illuminated the yard briefly. Nothing. Then another flash, and Lena saw them figures moving through the rain, surrounding the house. "How many?" she whispered. 6, maybe 7. Bo's voice was steady. "They'll try to smoke us out. You take the back window. Don't shoot unless you have a clear target. We need to conserve ammunition." She moved to her position, heart pounding. Through the rain, she could hear voices, though the words were lost in the storm. A torch flared. They were trying to light the barn despite the downpour. The first shot shattered the front window. Bo returned fire. The rifle cracked, deafening in the enclosed space. Lena saw movement at the back, a man running for the woodshed. She fired, saw him stumble and retreat. "Good shot," Bo called. "Keep them back from—" His words were cut off by a crash. The front door burst open, a man charging through. Bo swung the rifle like a club, caught him across the jaw. They grappled, crashed into the table. Another figure appeared in the doorway. Lena didn't think, just turned and fired. The man spun away, clutching his arm. "Behind you," Bo shouted. She whirled. A third attacker had come through the back window. No time to aim, she threw herself sideways as he fired. Felt the bullet tug at her skirt. Her own shot went wide, but it made him duck back. Bo had managed to knock his opponent unconscious. He snatched up the man's pistol, fired out the door to drive back others trying to enter. "We can't hold them," Lena gasped, reloading with trembling fingers. "We don't have to." Lightning flashed again, and Bo smiled grimly. "Listen." Through the storm came a new sound: hoofbeats. Many of them. Shouts of alarm from outside. The attackers were scattering. "The town," Bo said. "Someone must have seen the torches, raised the alarm." Sure enough, Tom Bradley's voice boomed through the rain. "McAllen, you alive in there?" "Alive and grateful," Bo called back. Men poured into the yard, townsmen armed with whatever they could find. Even Mayor Lorne was there, though he hung back, looking disgruntled. "We saw the lights," Doc Paulson explained, water streaming from his hat. "Figured it was Garrison's boys again." It was. Bo gestured to the unconscious man on his floor. This one might have some answers. As the men dealt with the prisoner and checked for other attackers, Lena found herself shaking, not from fear from the aftermath, the closeness of it all. Bo noticed, drew her aside. "You all right?" "Yes, no, I don't know." She laughed shakily. "Is it always like this out here?" "No," he said seriously. "Sometimes it's worse." She looked at him, soaked, battered, but solid and sure, and made a decision. "Then I'd better keep practicing with that rifle." Something shifted in his expression. "You're staying even after this?" "Someone has to watch your back." She managed a real smile. "Besides, you promised me a bed for the night. I intend to collect Bo McAllen." Despite everything, the violence, the storm, the danger still lurking, he smiled back. "The bed's yours, tonight and any night you need it." Later, after the townsmen had gone and the prisoner was secured in the root cellar to await the sheriff, Lena lay in Bo's bed listening to the rain. The sheets smelled like him leather and wood smoke and something indefinable but good. Through the floor, she could hear him moving in the main room, standing guard. She should have been terrified, should have been planning her escape from this violent land. Instead, she felt oddly safe, protected, but not coddled, valued for her strength, not diminished by it. "Sleep close or I'll miss you," she whispered to the darkness, testing the words. They felt right, felt true. Whatever tomorrow brought Garrison's gang, the town's judgment, the uncertain future she'd face it standing beside a man who saw her clearly and didn't flinch. For now, that was enough. The fire in the hearth had burned low, casting long shadows across the cabin floor. Lena lay still in Bo's bed, but sleep wouldn't come. Every creak of the house, every gust of wind made her tense, waiting for another attack. She heard Bo moving in the main room, the quiet tread of a man keeping watch. The rain had finally stopped, leaving an eerie silence broken only by water dripping from the eaves. Unable to bear the solitude any longer, she rose and padded to the doorway. Bo sat at the table, rifle across his knees, staring at the dying fire. He looked up as she approached. "Can't sleep?" His voice was soft in the darkness. "No, you never could after trouble." He gestured to the chair beside him. "Might as well sit. I'll make coffee." "I'll make it." She moved to the stove before he could protest. "You keep watch." They sat together as the coffee brewed, the familiar ritual somehow comforting after the violence. When she handed him a cup, their fingers brushed, and neither pulled away. "Town will have plenty to say about this," Lena observed. "Me spending the night?" "Let them talk." Bo's jaw tightened. "They weren't here when the bullets were flying." "It matters, though, to my reputation, such as it is." He set down his cup, turned to face her fully. "What matters is you're alive. What matters is you stood with me when you could have run." His voice roughened. "I haven't had anyone stand with me in a long time. Lena." The way he said her name made something flutter in her chest. She'd been alone so long. She'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen, truly seen by another person. "I know what it's like," she said quietly. "Being alone, having people look through you like you're not there, or worse, like you're something wrong that needs fixing." "You're not wrong." His hand covered hers on the table. "You're exactly right, just as you are." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Lena felt drawn to him, pulled by something stronger than propriety or caution. But before either could move, a sound outside made them freeze footsteps on the porch. Bo had his rifle up instantly. "Who's there?" "It's Jake Morrison," came the deputy's voice. "Got news you need to hear." Bo unbarred the door cautiously. The deputy entered, rain-soaked and grim-faced, his badge catching the firelight. "Sorry to disturb, but thought you should know immediately." That prisoner started talking. "Garrison's planning something big, not just raids anymore. He's gathering men, lots of them, plans to take the whole town." "When?" Bo asked. "Soon, maybe within the week. He's angry about last night, about Miss Fairchild here shooting his man." Jake glanced at Lena with something like respect. "Says he's going to burn Cedar Hollow to the ground if that's what it takes to drive out folks who resist." Lena felt cold despite the fire. "How many men?" "Prisoner says 20, maybe 30, more than the town can handle. We need to wire for federal marshals." Bo said. Jake shook his head. "Telegraph lines are down. Cut, most likely. We're on our own." After the deputy left, they sat in heavy silence. The coffee grew cold in their cups. "You should leave," Bo said finally. "Take Duchess and ride for Laramie. This isn't your fight." "The hell it isn't." The profanity slipped out, surprising them both. "I live here. I work here. That makes it my fight." "Lena." "No." She stood, pacing to the window. "I've run before. Left places because it was easier than standing. Not this time. This isn't about pride. It's about staying alive." She turned to face him. "Is it, or is it about you thinking you need to protect me like I'm made of glass?" "I don't think that." He rose too, crossing to her. "I know you're strong. I've seen you prove it. But He stopped, jaw working. "But what?" "But I can't lose anyone else." The words came out raw, torn from somewhere deep. "Not to Garrison, not to violence. I can't watch that again." The pain in his voice made her chest ache. She reached up, touched his face gently. "You won't lose me. I'm too stubborn to die easy." He caught her hand, held it against his cheek. "Don't joke about this." "I'm not joking." She met his eyes steadily. "I'm choosing to stay, to stand with you in this town. That's my choice to make. Bo, not yours." For a moment they stood frozen, her hand on his face, his covering hers. Then something broke in his expression, and he pulled her against him, holding her tight. "Damn you," he whispered into her hair. "Damn you for making me care again." She wrapped her arms around him, feeling the solid strength of him, the way he trembled slightly despite it. Caring isn't a curse. Feels like one sometimes. But his arms didn't loosen. They stood that way for a long moment, holding each other in the dim cabin while danger circled like wolves in the darkness. Finally, Bo pulled back enough to look at her face. "If you're staying, we need to prepare, really prepare this time." "All right." But neither moved. The space between them hummed with possibility, with words unspoken and needs unmet. Lena felt herself swaying toward him, saw his eyes drop to her mouth. "Lena," he said, her name a question and answer all at once. She answered by rising on her toes and pressing her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, as if they were both afraid the other might bolt. Then his hand came up to cup the back of her head, and the kiss deepened, became something desperate and necessary. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Bo rested his forehead against hers. This complicates things, he said. Everything about me complicates things. She managed a shaky laugh. Haven't you figured that out by now? I'm starting to... His thumb stroked her cheek. Stay close to me. Not just tonight, until this is over. She knew what he was asking, not just for her presence, but for her trust, for the vulnerability of depending on another person. How close? She asked softly. His answer was to lead her back to the bedroom, to pull her down beside him on the narrow bed. They lay fully clothed on top of the covers, her back pressed to his chest, his arms solid around her waist. This close, he murmured against her hair. Close enough that I know you're safe. Close enough that I can breathe. She laced her fingers through his. What will people say? Let them say what they want. I'm tired of being careful, tired of living like I'm already dead. His arm tightened around her. You make me feel alive again. Lena Fairchild. First time in 4 years. The confession hung in the darkness between them. Lena turned in his arms, studied his face in the dim light filtering through the window. You make me feel seen, she admitted. First time in my whole life. He kissed her again, soft and sure. Sleep now. Tomorrow we'll face whatever comes. Together. Together. She settled against him, feeling the rise and fall of his breathing, the steady beat of his heart. Outside. The first hints of dawn touched the sky, painting it the color of hope and blood. Beau, she whispered. That thing you said earlier, sleep close or I'll miss you. She felt him smile against her hair. What about it? I understand it now. His lips brushed her temple. Good. As sleep finally claimed her. Lena thought about the battles to come, Garrison's gang, the town's judgment, the uncertain future, but wrapped in Beau's arms, feeling his breath warm against her neck. She found she wasn't afraid. She'd spent her whole life being strong alone. Now, for the first time, she had someone strong to stand beside, someone who saw her not as too much or not enough, but as exactly right. The sun rose fully, painting the cabin golden. In a week, maybe less, violence would come to Cedar Hollow. But for now, in this moment, two damaged souls held each other close and found peace in the simple act of not being alone. Sleep close, Beau murmured, already half asleep. I will, Lena promised. Always. And she meant it. Whatever came next, whatever price they paid for this connection, she would not let go. She'd found something worth fighting for, worth staying for, worth the risk of caring again. In Beau McCallan's arms, Lena Fairchild had found home. The next days passed in a blur of preparation. Word of Garrison's planned attack had spread through Cedar Hollow like wildfire, and the town transformed. Men who'd never held guns learned to shoot. Women organized supplies and fortified buildings. Even Mayor Lorne, for all his blustering, helped coordinate defenses. Lena split her time between the ranch and town, helping where she could. The scandal of her staying nights at Beau's place seemed suddenly trivial compared to survival. She worked leather until her fingers bled, making ammunition pouches and rifle slings. Beau taught anyone willing to learn how to fight, how to defend. On the fourth morning, as she repaired a holster in the cabin, Beau entered with an expression she'd learned meant trouble. Scouts spotted them, he said quietly. Garrison's men, camped about 10 miles north. They'll likely hit us tomorrow, maybe tonight. Lena's hand stilled on the leather. How many? 25, at least, maybe more. He crossed to her, cupped her face in his hands. It's not too late. You could still... Don't. She covered his hands with hers. We've had this conversation. I'm staying. He kissed her forehead, lingering. Then we'd best get to town. They'll need every gun. They rode in together, no longer caring who saw. The main street bustled with activity barricades going up, windows being boarded, children being sent to the most fortified buildings. Mrs. Gertie stood outside her boarding house directing traffic like a general. "About time you two showed up. Lena, I need you organizing the women at the church. Bo, the men are gathering at the saloon." "I'm fighting with the men," Lena said firmly.
"Mrs.?"
Gertie's eyes narrowed. Then she nodded. "Course you are. Should have known better than to suggest otherwise." At the saloon, they found organized chaos. Tom Bradley had taken charge, his blacksmith's practicality serving well. Maps spread across tables, men clustered around discussing tactics. "McAllen? Good." Tom looked up. "We're putting our best shots on the roofs. Can you take the hotel?" "Lena's a better shot with a rifle." Bo said, "She should take the hotel. I'll cover the bank." Tom hesitated only a moment. "All right, Miss Fairchild. You'll have Jake Morrison with you. Try not to shoot each other." As sunset approached, the town grew quiet. Too quiet. Lena crouched on the hotel roof, rifle ready, watching the horizon. Below, the street stood empty except for tumbleweeds and tension. Jake Morrison, young but steady, scanned the opposite direction. "Never thought I'd be defending the town alongside a woman," he admitted. "Never thought I'd be defending a town at all," Lena replied. "Life takes funny turns." "That it does." He paused. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you're here. Seen you shoot. We need every advantage." The first shot came at full dark, shattering the window of the mercantile. Then chaos erupted. Garrison's men came from 3 directions at once, some mounted, some on foot, all firing. Lena picked her targets carefully, making each shot count. A raider climbing toward the bank down. Another trying to set fire to the stable dropped. Beside her, Jake fired steadily, calling out positions. "Group coming down Main Street," he shouted. Lena swung her rifle, sighted, fired. The lead rider tumbled from his horse. The others scattered for cover. Through the smoke and gunfire, she caught glimpses of Bo on the bank roof, his rifle speaking in measured rhythm. The battle raged for what felt like hours. Buildings caught fire despite their preparations. Men fell on both sides. Lena's ammunition ran low, and she switched to her revolver, picking closer targets. Then she saw him, Garrison himself, recognizable by the description she'd heard. Tall, scarred, wearing a black coat that billowed as he strode down the center of the street like he owned it. He was heading for the bank, for Bo. "Cover me," she told Jake, already moving. "Where are you, Lena?" But she was already sliding down the roof, dropping to the boardwalk. She ran along the buildings, keeping to shadows, trying to intercept Garrison before he reached Bo's position. She came around the corner just as Garrison raised his gun toward the bank roof. No time to think. She launched herself at him, knocking his aim wide. His shot went wild, and they crashed to the ground together. Garrison was stronger, heavier. He rolled, pinning her down, hand going for her throat. She drove her knee up hard, making him grunt and loosen his grip. Her hand found her knife, and she slashed at his arm. He rolled away, cursing, blood darkening his sleeve. They faced each other in the middle of the street, surrounded by the ongoing battle. "You're the woman who's been causing trouble," Garrison snarled. "McAllen's new woman." "I'm nobody's woman but my own," Lena replied, knife ready. He laughed, an ugly sound. "Tough talk. Let's see how tough you are when—" The rifle shot took him in the shoulder, spinning him around. Bo stood at the edge of the bank roof, already levering another round. But Garrison was moving, diving for cover, firing back. Lena scrambled behind a water barrel as bullets chewed splinters from the wood. The battle around them intensified, but all she could focus on was keeping Garrison pinned while Bo repositioned. Then, suddenly, new gunfire erupted from the east, fresh shots, but not aimed at the town. Confusion spread through Garrison's men as they found themselves caught between defenders and this new threat. "Federal Marshals!" someone shouted. "The Marshals are here!" Later, Lena learned that Miss Webb had ridden out 3 nights ago, making the dangerous journey to Laramie alone to fetch help. But in that moment, all she knew was that the tide had turned. Garrison's men broke, scattering into the darkness. Some were captured, some escaped. Garrison himself was taken alive, wounded but defiant, to face federal justice. As dawn broke over Cedar Hollow, the cost became clear. Buildings burned, windows shattered. Good men lost, but the town had held. They'd survived. Lena found Bo at the doctor's office, getting a graze on his arm tended, when he saw her covered in soot, dress torn. Alive, his face transformed. "You damned fool woman," he said roughly, pulling her against him with his good arm. "Charging Garrison like that." "Saved your life," she mumbled against his chest. "Nearly stopped my heart," but he held her tighter. Around them, the town began the work of healing. Women emerged to tend wounded, put out remaining fires, comfort the grieving. Mayor Lorne, his arm in a sling from the fight, approached them. "Miss Fairchild," he said formally, "I owe you an apology, and my thanks. This town is lucky to have you." Lena studied him, saw sincerity beneath the pompousness. "This town is my home," she said simply. "A person defends their home." Lorne nodded, cleared his throat. "Yes, well, if you're looking for work, McCready's decided to retire. Says his nerves can't take any more excitement. His shop needs a new owner, someone who knows leather." Lena felt Bo's arm tighten around her. "I might be interested," she said carefully, "but I've got commitments at the McAllen Ranch too. I'm sure you can work something out." Lorne's eyes twinkled, actually twinkled. "After all, it's a short ride between the ranch and town, especially for someone who's staying there regular-like." He walked away before either could respond. Lena looked up at Bo. "Did the mayor just give us his blessing?" "I think he did." Bo touched her face gently. "The question is, do you want it? The shop, the ranch, this life?" She thought of all the miles she'd traveled, all the places she'd run from, all the times she'd been told she was too much or not enough. Then she looked at this man who saw her truly, this town that had bled beside her, this life that fit like well-worn leather. "I want it," she said, "all of it. If you're offering—" His answer was a kiss that tasted of gunpowder and promise. There in the dawn light with their town rebuilding around them. When they broke apart, he smiled a real smile, the first she'd seen from him. "Then let's go home," he said. "We've got a ranch to run and a shop to open, together." "Together," she agreed, and meant it with every fiber of her being. They walked hand in hand through the battle-scarred streets, past neighbors who nodded approval, past the remains of the night's violence, toward a future neither had dared imagine. The woman who looked like a man in a dress and the man who'd lost everything had found in each other what they'd never thought to have again: home, purpose, and the bone-deep certainty of being truly seen. 3 months had passed since the battle with Garrison's gang. Cedar Hollow bore new scars, but also new strength. Buildings had been repaired, windows replaced, and life had settled into something resembling normal, if normal included Lena Fairchild running both a leather shop in town and helping manage the McAllen Ranch. She was working on a saddle in what was now Fairchild's Leather and Tack when the bell above the door chimed. A woman entered, tall, elegant despite travel dust, with auburn hair and knowing green eyes. "I'm looking for Bo McAllen," the woman said. "I was told he might be here." Something in her tone made Lena set down her tools carefully. "He's at the ranch. Can I help you with something?" The woman studied her with uncomfortable intensity. "You must be the woman everyone's talking about, the one who fought off outlaws and won Bo's heart." "I'm Lena Fairchild." She kept her voice neutral. "And you are—" "Charlotte Morrison. I was Bo's sister-in-law, Mary's younger sister." Lena's breath caught. In all their conversations, Bo had never mentioned Mary having a sister. "I see. He's never mentioned me. I'm not surprised. Charlotte's laugh was bitter. We didn't part on good terms, but I've come a long way to see him. Would you be kind enough to tell me where exactly the ranch is? Every instinct told Lena to be wary, but she couldn't refuse such a request. I'll do better than that. I was heading back anyway. You can follow me. The ride was silent except for hoofbeats and wind. Lena's mind raced with questions, but she held them back. This was Beau's story to tell or not tell. When they reached the ranch, Beau was in the corral working with a young stallion. He looked up at their approach, his smile for Lena freezing when he saw Charlotte. Hello, Beau, Charlotte said, dismounting gracefully. It's been a long time. Beau stood perfectly still, the lead rope slack in his hands. 5 years. What are you doing here? Charlotte. Can't a woman visit her sister's husband? Former husband. Mary's gone. His voice was flat, controlled. You know that. Yes, I know. Charlotte's composure cracked slightly. I've come to talk about that night, about what really happened. Lena saw Beau's knuckles whiten around the rope. There's nothing to talk about. There's everything to talk about. Charlotte stepped closer. I know you blame me. You have every right, but you need to hear the truth. The truth. Now Beau's control slipped, showing the anger beneath. The truth is that you convinced Mary to take that train. You said I was being overprotective, that she needed to assert her independence. If I hadn't, she'd have gone anyway. Charlotte's voice rose to match his. She was already planning it. Beau, she'd bought the tickets before I ever said a word. The words hung in the air like struck bells. Lena watched Beau's face change, saw the certainty he'd carried for 5 years begin to crack. You're lying, he said, but without conviction. I'm not. Charlotte reached into her bag, pulled out a worn envelope. She wrote me before she left. Read it yourself. Beau took the letter with trembling hands. Lena wanted to go to him, but sensed this was something he needed to face alone. She watched as he read, saw his shoulders bow under the weight of whatever words Mary had left behind. She was leaving me, he said finally, voice barely audible. Taking Tommy and going back east. She was unhappy. Charlotte nodded, tears tracking through the travel dust on her cheeks. The ranch life was killing her slowly. She felt trapped, isolated. She loved you, Beau, but she couldn't be what you needed her to be. So you helped her plan it. I helped her find courage to talk to you. That's all. She was going to come back, have a proper conversation, work things out. The trip was just to clear her head, to see her parents. But then Garrison's gang hit the train. Beau crumpled the letter in his fist. And instead of an unhappy wife, I had a dead one, a martyred saint. I've been mourning for 5 years. The pain in his voice made Lena step forward. Beau! Don't! He held up a hand, not looking at either woman. I need time. Charlotte, there's a boarding house in town. Mrs. Gertie's. You can stay there. Beau, please. Not now. He turned and walked into the house, closing the door firmly behind him. Charlotte stood lost in the yard, tears flowing freely now. Lena found herself torn between following Beau and helping this woman who just shattered his world, or perhaps freed him from it. Come on, she said finally. I'll ride back to town with you. They rode in heavy silence until Charlotte spoke. You love him. It wasn't a question, but Lena answered anyway. Yes. Good. He needs someone strong. Mary wasn't. She tried, but she wasn't built for this life. The isolation broke her. Charlotte glanced sideways at Lena. But you're different. You fit here. I'm trying to. No, you do. I saw it the moment we rode up. The way you held yourself. The way the horses responded to you. You belong to this land in a way Mary never did. Charlotte's voice was sad, but not bitter. In a way I never did either. They reached town as dusk painted the sky purple. At the boarding house. Charlotte turned to Lena. Tell him I'll be here for a week, if he wants to talk, to ask questions, to rage at me, whatever he needs. I owe him that much. I'll tell him. And Miss Fairchild, take care of him. He's a good man who's been carrying guilt that was never his to bear. Maybe now he can finally set it down. Lena rode back to the ranch in darkness, finding her way by instinct and starlight. The house was dark, except for one lamp in the main room. She found Bo sitting at the table, the letter smoothed out before him, a bottle of whiskey at his elbow. She was right, he said without looking up. I've been mourning a ghost, a woman who never existed except in my guilty imagination. Lena sat beside him, close but not touching. She existed, just not exactly as you remembered. I built her up in my mind, made her perfect because the dead can't disappoint you. He took a drink, grimaced. Truth is, we were struggling, had been for months before she died. I thought it was just the stress of ranch life, that things would get better, but she was miserable. Lena, my wife, was miserable, and I was too stubborn to see it. You loved her. Love makes us blind sometimes. Did I love her, or did I love the idea of her? He finally looked at Lena, eyes red-rimmed but clear. God help me, when I read this letter, part of me was relieved to finally have permission to stop carrying this perfect ghost. What kind of man does that make me? Human, Lena said simply. It makes you human. He reached for her hand, held it like an anchor. I've been frozen for 5 years, afraid to move forward, afraid to let go, afraid to feel anything real because it might hurt like that again. And now I'm terrified. His grip tightened. Because what I feel for you is real. More real than anything I've felt in years. And if I lose you... You won't! She moved closer, cupped his face with her free hand. I'm not Mary, Bo. I'm not delicate or refined or any of those things. I'm rough and stubborn, and I fit here like I've never fit anywhere else. This land doesn't break me, it makes me stronger. I know. His voice was wondering. That's what terrifies me. You're not asking me to be anything but what I am. I don't know what to do with that. You accept it, she said, the same way I accept you, ghosts and guilt and all. He kissed her then, desperate and grateful and full of a pain that was already beginning to heal. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. Will you stay tonight? Not in the bed, just close. I don't want to be alone with all this. As close as you need, she promised. They made a pallet by the fire, lying together fully clothed, her back to his chest as had become their custom. But tonight he held her tighter, like she might disappear if he loosened his grip. Charlotte leaves in a week, Lena said into the darkness. She wants to talk to you, to answer questions, to let you rage if you need to. I don't want to rage. I'm tired of being angry. He pressed his face into her hair. I just want to move forward, to build something new with you instead of living in the ruins of what was. Then that's what we'll do. Simple as that. Simple as that. She turned in his arms to face him. You once told me to sleep close or you'd miss me. Well, I'm here. Bo McCallan. Close as breath. Close as heartbeat. I'm not going anywhere. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips soft, reverent touches that sealed the promise between them. I love you, he whispered. Not like a memory or a ghost or an idea, but real and present and probably messy. Good, she whispered back, because I love you the same way. They held each other as the fire died to embers. Two people who'd found in each other not perfection, but something better: acceptance, understanding, and the courage to build a future on honest ground. Tomorrow, Bo would talk to Charlotte, would face the complicated truth of his past. Tomorrow, they would work leather and horses and continue building their life together. But tonight, they simply held close, letting old ghosts fade and new love take root in the fertile soil of truth. The sky hung heavy with the promise of storm as Lena worked in the leather shop. Thunder rolled across the prairie like distant drums, and the air tasted of copper and rain. She was setting the final stitches on a bridle when the door burst open. Jake Morrison stood there, badge askew, face grim. "Miss Fairchild, you need to come quick. There's been word about Garrison's remaining men. They're planning something for tonight." "Garrison's in federal prison," Lena said, setting down her work. "His brother isn't. Wade Garrison. Just got word he's gathered what's left of the gang. They're coming for revenge specifically for you and Bo." Lena's blood ran cold. She grabbed her rifle from behind the counter. "How many?" 8, maybe 10. Not like before, but enough to cause real trouble. Jake shifted uncomfortably. "There's more. They've taken the Stewart family hostage at their homestead. Say they'll let them go if you and Bo come out to face them alone." The Stewarts, a young couple with 2 small children who'd recently settled outside town. Lena's jaw tightened. "Where's Bo?" "Already riding for the Stewart place. Wouldn't wait for backup." Jake's face showed his frustration. "Said he wouldn't let another family die because of him." Lena was already moving, checking her revolver, strapping on her gun belt. "Get the men together. Follow as quick as you can." "Miss Fairchild, you can't—" But she was gone, running for Duchess. The mare sensed her urgency, stretched out into a full gallop as they raced toward the Stewart homestead. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the prairie in stark flashes. She saw the smoke first, not the black smoke of burning buildings, but the gray wisps of campfires. The Stewart cabin sat in a small valley, surrounded by cottonwoods. As she approached, she could make out figures moving among the trees. Bo's horse was already there, riderless, tied to a fence post. Lena's heart clenched. She dismounted well back from the cabin, moving forward on foot, rifle ready. "That's far enough," a voice called out. Wade Garrison stepped from behind the barn, holding a pistol to the head of Mrs. Stewart. The woman clutched her infant daughter, trying to shield the child. "Let them go," Lena said, keeping her rifle steady. "Your quarrel's with us, not them." "You're right about that." Wade's face was a twisted mirror of his brother's same cruel eyes, same sneer. "You cost me my brother. McAllen cost me 5 years of profits. Time to settle accounts." "Then settle them, but let the family go first." Wade laughed. An ugly sound. "You're in no position to negotiate. Woman, drop the rifle." Before Lena could respond, Bo emerged from the cabin, hands raised. 2 men flanked him, guns drawn. His face was calm, but Lena saw the tension in his shoulders. "I'm here," Bo said. "Now release the Stewarts." "Not yet." Wade's smile widened. "First, I want you both to understand something. You took everything from me, so I'm going to take everything from you, starting with each other." He gestured to his men. "Tie them up, back to back. Let them feel each other die slow." As the outlaws moved forward, Lena caught Bo's eye. He gave an almost imperceptible nod. They'd fought together before. They could read each other without words. The first man reached for Lena's rifle. She let him take it, then drove her elbow into his solar plexus. As he doubled over, she grabbed his pistol, rolled sideways, came up firing. Bo moved at the same instant, grappling with one guard while driving the other back. The clearing erupted in chaos. "Mrs. Stewart ran for the cabin with her children," Wade cursed, trying to get a clear shot. Lena felt the bullet before she heard it, a punch of fire through her side that spun her around. She hit the ground hard but kept rolling, found cover behind a water trough. Blood soaked through her shirt, but she forced herself to focus. "Lena," Bo's voice, raw with fear. "I'm good," she called back, though she wasn't sure it was true. "Watch your left." More gunfire. Through the pain, she saw Bo go down, tackled by 2 men. Wade stood over him, gun raised. "No," Lena forced herself up, stumbling from cover. Her shot took one of the men holding Bo, giving him room to move. But Wade's gun swung toward her. "You first, then?" The shot echoed across the valley. But it wasn't Wade's gun. It was a rifle from the tree line. Wade stumbled, clutching his shoulder. More shots followed as Jake Morrison and the townsmen burst from cover on horseback. The remaining outlaws scattered, some falling to the defenders' guns, others fleeing into the storm that finally broke overhead. Rain poured down in sheets, turning the ground to mud. Lena sank to her knees, hand pressed to her bleeding side. Then Bo was there, catching her before she fell. "I've got you," he said, rain mixing with what might have been tears on his face. "Stay with me." "Not going anywhere," she managed. "We talked about this. Too stubborn to die." "Don't joke." His hands pressed against the wound, trying to stem the bleeding. "Not about this." Doc Paulson appeared through the rain, medical bag in hand. As he worked to stop the bleeding, Lena kept her eyes on Bo's face. "The Stewarts?" she asked. "Safe, all safe." He smoothed wet hair from her forehead. "You saved them. Saved me. We saved each other. That's what we do." Doc Paulson's voice cut through. "We need to get her to town. Now." The ride back was a blur of pain and rain, and Bo's voice keeping her anchored. She remembered being lifted, carried, the smell of carbolic and whiskey. Then darkness. She woke to sunlight and the sound of quiet breathing. The room was familiar, Bo's bedroom at the ranch. Her side ached, but the pain was manageable, wrapped in clean bandages. Bo sat in a chair beside the bed, slumped forward, one hand holding hers even in sleep. He looked haggard, still wearing the same clothes from the fight, now stained with mud and blood. "How long?" she whispered. His eyes snapped open. "Lena, thank God." He lifted her hand to his lips. 3 days. You've been in and out. Did we get them all?" "Most. Wade Garrison's alive, heading to join his brother in prison. The rest are dead or scattered." His voice roughened. "When I saw you fall—" "Hey," she squeezed his hand weakly. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." "You almost did." Doc said another inch to the left. He couldn't finish. "But it wasn't another inch. I'm too ornery to die. Remember." He laughed, a broken sound. "I can't do this without you. Lena, I thought I was strong alone, but I'm not. You've become necessary to me as breathing." "Good thing I'm staying then." She tugged weakly at his hand. "Come here." He moved to sit on the bed's edge, careful of her injury. She reached up, touched his unshaven cheek. "We're quite a pair," she said. "Both too stubborn to die, too damaged to live easy. But maybe that's what makes us fit." "You fit perfect." He leaned down, kissed her gently. "Marry me." The words hung between them like suspended rain. Lena stared at him, wondering if the blood loss had affected her hearing. "What?" "Marry me," he repeated, more certain now, not because it's proper or expected, but because when I thought I might lose you, all I could think was how much time we'd wasted, how many nights we've slept close but not close enough, how many mornings I've wanted to wake with you there permanent, not just visiting. "Bo, I know you don't need marriage, don't need a man to complete you, but I need you. Need to know you're mine as much as I'm yours, legal and binding and real." Lena thought of all the reasons to say no. Her independence, her hard-won self-sufficiency, the disaster of her first attempt at marriage. Then she thought of this man who saw her true, who stood beside her in fights, who held her close in the darkness and whispered that she was exactly right as she was. "Yes," she said simply. His smile broke like sunrise. "Yes." "Yes." She pulled him down for another kiss. Longer this time. "But I keep the leather shop, and I still work with the horses, and I wear trousers when I want. I wouldn't have you any other way." "Then yes, Bo McCallan, I'll marry you." He kissed her again, carefully but thoroughly. When they broke apart, Both were smiling through tears. "Sleep close," he murmured, the old words taking on new meaning. "Always," she promised. "Close as two people can be." He stretched out beside her on the bed, infinitely gentle with her injury. She turned into him as much as her wound allowed, fitting against his side like she belonged there, which she did. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving the prairie washed clean and sparkling. Inside, two battered souls held each other close and made promises that would last a lifetime. Not perfect promises, not easy ones, but real and true and strong as leather. The woman who looked like a man in a dress had found her place at last, not in spite of who she was, but because of it. And the man who had lost everything had found that sometimes, if you're very lucky, life gives you a second chance at happiness. You just have to be brave enough to take it. The afternoon sun slanted through the window of Fairchild's leather and tack, illuminating dust motes that danced like tiny spirits. Lena worked steadily on a new saddle, her movements careful but sure. 6 weeks had passed since the fight with Wade Garrison's gang, and her side still pulled sometimes, a reminder of how close she'd come to losing everything. The bell above the door chimed. She looked up to find Mrs. Stewart entering with her 2 children, the baby on her hip and young Thomas hiding behind her skirts. "Miss Fairchild," the woman began, then caught herself. "I mean, soon-to-be Mrs. McCallan." "Lena is fine," Lena said, setting down her awl. "How can I help you? I wanted to thank you properly for what you did." "Mrs." Stewart's eyes misted. "You risked your life for my family. Anyone would have—" "No." The woman's voice was firm. "They wouldn't have. You and Mr. McCallan came alone, faced those men for strangers. That's not common courage." She reached into her basket, pulled out a carefully folded quilt. "I make these. It's not much, but I wanted you to have it for your new home." Lena took the quilt, running her fingers over the intricate stitching. The pattern showed mountains against a sunset sky, worked in blues and purples and gold. "It's beautiful," she said, genuinely moved. "Thank you." "The whole town's talking about the wedding." Mrs. Stewart continued, settling the baby more comfortably. 3 days away now, isn't it?" "It is." Lena couldn't quite hide her nervousness. "Just a simple ceremony, nothing fancy. I think it's romantic, the way Mr. McCallan looks at you, like you hung the moon." She smiled. "My Robert says he's never seen Beau McCallan so much as smile before you came to town, and now he fairly glows." After the Stewarts left, Lena found herself staring at the quilt, thinking about how much had changed. 6 months ago, she'd ridden into Cedar Hollow with nothing but hurt pride and stubborn determination. Now she had a business, a home, a man who loved her true, and a town that had finally accepted her. The door opened again. This time it was Beau, carrying a package wrapped in brown paper. "Thought I'd find you here," he said, crossing to her. "How's the side?" "Better every day." She leaned into his kiss, still marveling that she could do this freely. "What's in the package?" He set it on the counter, suddenly looking almost shy. "Wedding gift. I know we said we wouldn't, but I saw this in Cheyenne last week and couldn't resist." Curious, she unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a leather-bound journal, the cover tooled with intricate designs of horses and mountains. Her breath caught. "Open it," he urged. The first page bore an inscription in his careful hand. "For Lena Fairchild McCallan, who writes her own story. With all my love, Beau." "It's perfect," she whispered, running her fingers over the leather. "How did you know?" "Saw you sketching saddle designs on scraps of paper. Figured you needed something proper to record your ideas." He pulled her against him gently, mindful of her healing side. "Besides, our story deserves to be written down. The real one, not the one people will tell years from now." "And what will people tell?" Oh, probably some nonsense about a wild woman who tamed a grieving widower, or a broken man who taught a spinster to love. He kissed her temple. They'll miss the truth entirely. Which is, two stubborn souls who found in each other what they never thought to have a partner, an equal, someone who sees true. His arms tightened around her, someone to sleep close to. She turned in his arms, reaching up to touch his face. Speaking of sleeping close, Doc Paulson says I'm healed enough for after the wedding. Color touched his cheeks, making him look younger. Lena Fairchild, are you trying to scandalize me? Maybe a little. She grinned. Someone told me you used to be quite the charmer before. Before? He nodded, the shadow that crossed his face lighter than it used to be. That was a different man. I like this one better, she said firmly. The real one. He kissed her then, deeper than the careful touches of the past weeks. When they broke apart, both were breathing harder. 3 more days, he said roughly. 3 more days, she agreed. The wedding day dawned clear and bright, one of those perfect autumn mornings that made the prairie look like spun gold. Lena stood in her room at the boarding house, studying herself in the mirror. She'd refused a traditional wedding dress, choosing instead a split riding skirt in deep blue wool and a white blouse with pearl buttons. Her hair was pinned up properly for once, adorned with a simple comb that had been her mother's. You look beautiful, Miss Webb said from the doorway, and exactly like yourself. That's the idea. Lena smoothed the skirt nervously. Is it time? It is, and half the town's gathered at the church, even Mayor Lorne's there, looking almost happy. The walk to the church felt both eternal and too quick. Then the doors opened, and she saw him. Beau stood at the altar in his best black suit, the one she'd only seen him wear once before, but it was his face that caught her the pure joy there, the wonder, as if he couldn't quite believe this was real. Tom Bradley walked her down the aisle, having volunteered for the honor. You saved this town, he murmured. Least I can do is see you married proper. Then she was standing before Beau, their hands clasped, the preacher's words washing over them. She barely heard the ceremony, too lost in Beau's eyes, in the solid reality of this moment. Do you, Lena, take this man? I do, she said, not waiting for the full question. Laughter rippled through the church. Let him finish, Beau whispered, grinning. But when his turn came, he was just as eager. I do, absolutely, without question. More laughter. Then they were kissing, the church erupting in cheers. They walked back down the aisle together, pelted with rice and good wishes. The reception was held at Mrs. Gertie's boarding house, the dining room packed with well-wishers. Lena was surprised by how many came people who'd once looked at her with suspicion now offering genuine congratulations. Never thought I'd see Beau McCallan happy again, Doc Paulson said, shaking her hand warmly. You've worked a miracle. No miracle, she replied, just stubbornness. As the sun began to set, Beau caught her hand. Ready to go home? Past ready? They slipped out quietly, riding together toward the ranch. The house had been expanded over the past weeks, a proper bedroom added, the kitchen enlarged. It was ready to be a real home. Inside, Lena found herself suddenly nervous. This was different from their careful closeness of the past months. This was marriage, permanent and real. Hey, Beau said softly, reading her mood as he always could. We don't have to, we can take things slow. She looked at him, this good man who'd seen her at her strongest and weakest, who'd stood beside her in gunfights and held her through nightmares, who'd never once asked her to be less than she was. I don't want slow, she said. I want real. I want you. He crossed to her, cupped her face in his hands. You have me, have had me since the night you ran toward a burning barn instead of away. They came together like coming home, all careful touches and whispered endearments. Later, lying entwined in their marriage bed, Lena traced lazy patterns on Beau's chest. "What are you thinking?" he asked. That Samuel Hartley was right. I do look like a man in a dress. She felt him tense and continued quickly. "And that's the best thing that ever happened to me, because it brought me here, to you, to this life that fits like it was made for me." He relaxed, pulled her closer. "Fate works in strange ways." "Not fate, choice." She propped herself on an elbow to look at him. Every step was a choice. To leave Cheyenne, to stay in Cedar Hollow, to run toward that fire, to stand and fight, to love you, all choices. And now I choose to stay, to build a life with you, to work leather and train horses and maybe raise children who'll be too stubborn for their own good. She smiled. To sleep close every night for the rest of our lives. That's a lot of choices, he said softly. I'm a decisive woman. That you are, Mrs. McCallan. He pulled her down for a kiss, and I thank God for it every day. Outside, the prairie wind sang through the cottonwoods, carrying the scent of coming winter. Inside, two people who'd thought themselves too damaged for love proved that sometimes the broken pieces of two lives can fit together to make something stronger than what came before. They slept close that night and all the nights after, no longer missing what was lost, but celebrating what was found. In the morning, they would rise to work, leather and horses, to build their life stroke by stroke like a careful saddle stitch. But for now, they simply held each other, two souls no longer alone, writing their own story in the vast book of the prairie, a story of courage, acceptance, and love that saw truly. Spring arrived like a promise kept, painting the prairie in shades of green and gold. Lena stood in the doorway of their expanded cabin, one hand resting on her growing belly, watching Beau work with a young colt in the corral. 6 months of marriage had only deepened what lay between them, that bone-deep understanding that needed no words. You shouldn't be on your feet so much. Mrs. Gertie called from the garden where she was helping plant vegetables. The older woman had taken to visiting twice a week, claiming Lena needed watching over in her condition. I'm pregnant, not broken, Lena replied, but she settled into the rocking chair Beau had made for her last month. Besides, the leather won't work itself. She'd kept the shop in town, riding in 3 days a week until Doc Paulson had forbidden it last month. Now she worked from the ranch, and customers made the trek out to place orders. Her reputation had spread beyond Cedar Hollow. Ranchers from neighboring counties sought out Fairchild leather goods. The morning passed peacefully. Lena worked on a special project, a tiny saddle, perfectly crafted but child-sized, a surprise for Beau, for some day when their child would be old enough to ride. The leather was the finest she'd ever worked with, dyed a deep mahogany and tooled with delicate wildflowers. That's beautiful work, a voice said from the porch steps. Lena looked up, surprised to find Charlotte Morrison. Mary's sister had returned to town the week before, claiming she wanted to make amends properly. Charlotte, Lena said carefully. Beau's in the corral if you're looking for him. Actually, I came to speak with you. Charlotte approached slowly, as if afraid of spooking a wild animal. May I sit? Lena gestured to the other chair. They sat in silence for a moment, watching Beau gentle the colt with infinite patience. I owe you an apology, Charlotte said finally. When I came here before, I was so focused on my own guilt that I didn't consider what my revelations would do to Beau, or to you. The truth needed telling, Lena replied. It set him free. It could have destroyed what you two were building. No, Lena's voice was firm. Nothing could have destroyed that. We're too stubborn, both of us. Like prairie grass, bend but don't break. Charlotte smiled slightly. Mary used to say Beau was like the land itself, enduring, unchangeable. She meant it as a criticism. She needed excitement, variety, the things a city could offer. And you, what do you need? Charlotte was quiet for a long moment. Forgiveness, I think, and perhaps a new start. She met Lena's eyes. "I've taken a teaching position in Cedar Hollow, if you and Bo will have me as a neighbor." Lena studied the other woman, seeing past the polished exterior to the loneliness beneath. "Everyone deserves a second chance. Besides, this baby will need all the family it can get." Charlotte's eyes widened. "You'd consider me family." Bo loved Mary. "You're Mary's sister. That makes you family, complicated as it might be." Lena's hand moved to her belly as the baby kicked. "Life's too short for holding grudges." Tears gathered in Charlotte's eyes. "Thank you. I thank you." Bo approached then, having seen their visitor. His face was cautious, but not hostile. "Charlotte." "I was just leaving," Charlotte said, rising quickly. "I wanted to welcome Lena to the family, properly this time." Something shifted in Bo's expression. "Stay for lunch. Lena's been cooking all morning." It was the beginning of a careful peace, one that would grow stronger with time. Charlotte proved to be a devoted aunt when little James was born 3 months later, and an even more devoted one when Sarah followed 2 years after. But that was still to come. For now, spring flowed into summer, and Lena grew round with child. The ranch prospered, the leather business thrived, and Cedar Hollow itself seemed to grow around them. The railroad brought new families, new businesses, new life to the frontier town. On a hot July evening, Lena sat in her rocking chair on the porch, trying to find a comfortable position. Her back ached, and the baby seemed determined to dance on her ribs. Bo sat on the steps, playing a harmonica he'd recently taken up again, something he hadn't done since Mary died. "Play Sweet Betsy from Pike," Lena requested. "I want to hear something cheerful." He obliged, the melody floating across the evening air. Halfway through, Lena gasped, grabbing the arms of her chair. "What is it?" Bo was beside her instantly. "I think—" Another wave of pain. "I think it's time." The next hours blurred together, Bo racing for Doc Paulson and Mrs. Gertie. Lena trying to remember everything the women had told her about birthing, the pain that came in waves like prairie storms. "You're doing fine, Mrs." Gertie soothed, wiping sweat from Lena's forehead. "Strong as always?" "Don't feel strong," Lena gasped between contractions. "You are," Bo said from beside her, letting her crush his hand. "Strongest person I know." Near dawn, James Bo McCallan entered the world with a cry that could have woken the whole territory. Lena held her son, exhausted but triumphant, while Bo stared at them both like they'd hung the stars. "He's perfect," Bo whispered, touching the baby's tiny fist with one finger. "Course he is," Lena managed. "Look at his parents." 2 years later, on another spring morning, Lena stood again in the doorway. James toddled in the yard, chasing chickens while Bo followed close behind, ready to catch him if he fell. Her leather shop now employed 2 apprentices, young women who'd come west seeking new lives just as she had. The ranch ran 60 head of cattle alongside the horses. Sarah kicked inside her belly, reminding Lena that soon they'd have another little one to chase through the prairie grass. She smiled, remembering the woman who'd ridden into Cedar Hollow with nothing but hurt pride and fierce independence. That woman still existed, still worked leather, still rode horses, still wore trousers when she pleased. But she'd grown too, expanded like the prairie itself to encompass new roles: wife, mother, businesswoman, pillar of a community that had once rejected her. "Mama, look," James called, holding up a feather he'd found. "Pretty." "Very pretty," she agreed, scooping him up despite her pregnant belly. "Should we show Aunt Charlotte?" "Aunt Char," James agreed enthusiastically, as if summoned. Charlotte appeared on the road from town, her teacherly demeanor softened by the smile she reserved for her nephew. Behind her rode Miss Webb, now Mrs. Bradley, having married Tom the blacksmith last winter. "We came for Sunday dinner," Charlotte called. "Hope that's still all right?" "Always," Lena replied. "Though you'll have to help cook. This little one has me moving slow. She patted her belly. The afternoon filled with laughter and stories, the table crowded with chosen family. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, Lena found herself on the porch again with Bo. "No regrets?" he asked, pulling her close. "Not one," she said firmly. "You?" "Only that it took so long to find you." James ran to them, arms raised. "Up, Papa!" Bo lifted his son, settling him between them. Soon there would be another child in their arms, another soul to raise on this unforgiving but beautiful land. "Sometimes," Lena said softly, "I think about that woman who told me I looked like a man in a dress, the one who sent me running west. And I want to thank him for being too blind to see what he had, for sending me to where I belonged." Bo kissed her temple. "Remind me to thank him too, if we ever meet." They sat together as stars began to appear, a family forged in fire and struggle, held together by choice and love and the simple act of sleeping close. The prairie wind carried the scent of sage and possibility, whispering stories of all who'd come before and all who'd come after. In the distance, a coyote called to its mate. The sound no longer seemed lonely to Lena. It was just another voice in the great conversation of the land, wild and free and utterly itself. "Just like her. Sleep close," Bo murmured. An old promise made new each time. "Always," Lena replied, meaning it to her bones. Always and forever. The stars wheeled overhead. The prairie breathed its ancient rhythm. And in a cabin built of love and stubbornness, a family settled in for the night. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, new stories to write in leather-bound journals and children's memories. But tonight, they were simply together, close as heartbeats, writing their own legend in the vast book of the West, a story that said sometimes the best things come to those who dare to be exactly who they are. And in the morning, they would rise to greet another day, side by side, sleeping close and missing nothing at all. Thank you so much for listening to this Wild West love story. I'd love to hear where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect and discuss your thoughts about Lena and Bo's journey. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Wild West Stories 1850. Hit that like button. And don't forget to click the hype button to help more people discover these tales of love, courage, and adventure in the American frontier. Until next time, keep riding toward your own horizons.